Good morning, all of you. Firstly, uh, what we are going to see today, or what we are going to discuss today, is the document Urban Perspective of Maoist. This is the third session in our series on Maoism. The first session was about journey of Maoism in India, in which we focused on the overall journey of Maoism in India. What were different steps, which all organizations were formed and got disintegrated, who were the important leaders. So that was covered in the first session. The second session, we focused on facts of Koregaon Bhima riot and facts of Elgar Parishad. So that session was more about sequence of events which took place from uh, December 2017 till that 1st of January 2018 when the riot actually took place. So it was more about facts which happened on ground. Today, we are going to focus on the strategy of urban perspective, which is a document by CPI Maoist. So CPI Maoist is a proscribed terrorist organization which was formed in the year 2004. We saw the journey of CPI Maoist since 67 when it was CPI ML and till 2004 when it became CPI Maoist. So today the focus would be more on the theory part of it. Few examples we are going to look into, few examples of either convicted Maoists or of those people who call themselves as Maoist or whom CPI Maoist celebrated or tried to glorify as Maoist. So we are going to see those kind of examples. Now, why we are going to see only those examples is because generally, whenever we talk about this urban Maoism or the urban cadre of Maoism, the cadre of CPI Maoist, then typically questions are raised that, okay, you are calling them Maoist, but did the court say that they are Maoist? Or what is the basis on which you call them Maoist? That's the reason we are going to focus on convicted Maoist, and we are going to focus on those examples which were declared as Maoist by CPI Maoists themselves. So as far as Elgar Parishad is concerned, this theory and few of the examples will form the background to understand the case of Elgar Parishad. In the last session, we went through different sequence of events. In the next session, which is scheduled in the month of November, we will be focusing on the legal dimensions of Elgar Parishad and certain legal nitty-gritties of Elgar Parishad. So today's session will be more about understanding the theory part of it and few examples which will help us understand how Maoists function in urban areas. This is a slide for those who did not attend last session. So on January 8, 2018, FIR was filed by a person in Pune. That FIR was against 6 people. Those people were from 2 organizations, basically Kabir Kala Manch and Republican Panther. Based on this FIR, on April 17, certain raids were conducted by Pune police. Certain material was recovered during these raids. On April 17, 2018, that material was sent to forensic lab for further investigation purpose. Clone copies were received by Pune police. May 17th, basis the material, the content of the recovered material, UAPA sections were applied by Pune police. On June 6th, few more raids were conducted and 5 people were arrested. Later on, based on the material which was received on these raids on June 6th, the Pune police came to know about few more individuals who were involved in this. So their names were also added. And on August 28th, few more arrests took place. So as of now, in Elgar Parishad case, total number of people arrested are 16. The last arrest was Stan Swami's arrest. So this is the sequence of events. This is the affidavit which was filed by Pune police. So the crux of this slide is what we call as Elgar Parishad case. That particular case, the scope of investigation of that case is not just limited to Koregaon Bhima violence, or it is not just limited to Elgar Parishad as such. It is much beyond that. It is about the conspiracy by CPI Maoist in which certain national and international elements are involved. So that is the scope of this Elgar Parishad case. Now this is the context. We also tried to understand in the first session that what Maoists want actually. So the central task of revolution, this anti-India war which Maoists are fighting from last more than 50 years, that is, they call it as revolution. So what is the central task of this revolution? The central task is seizure of political power through protracted people's war. This also we have got into the details. So protracted people's war means it will be a lengthy war in which the focus will be formation of revolutionary bases in the countryside, and then expanding those revolutionary bases and forming liberated zones. So that is how this war would be fought. Now, who will fight this war according to the Maoist? The common man of this country would fight this war for Maoist. That is what the Maoists believe in. And they are calling this as a revolution, and the central task of this revolution is seizure of political power. That means they want to overthrow this democracy and they want to establish a new democratic state in place of that, in place of the current democracy. And they do not want to stop there. That will be just one phase. The ultimate aim of this revolution is they want to establish a communist state. So that is their overall aim. So basically they do not want democracy, they do not want constitutional setup. That is what we need to understand. So common people would be used for this war against India. Now, how will they influence common people to fight this war against India? So they tell the common man of this country that this particular democracy is not the real democracy. It actually does not fulfill the aims of democracy. It does not actually takes care of the well-being or the overall development of human beings or overall development of the populace of this country. And they want to, whatever system they want to bring in, that particular system will fulfill all the needs of the common man. That is what the Maoists claim. So that is the brainwash they indulge in. That is about urban perspective. So when CPI Maoist was formed in the year 2004, the PWG, that is the People's War, and MCC, Maoist Communist Center, these two organizations came together, and their party members, they sat together and they drafted few documents. Which all documents were drafted? Important 5 documents were drafted. These are the 5 documents: party program, political resolution, then the theory of their MLM, that is the Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism, which according to them is the ideology of CPI Maoist, party constitution, strategy and tactics of Indian Revolution. So these were the documents drafted. In addition to this, urban perspective, our work in urban areas was also drafted. That was drafted subsequently. Now, this particular document, Strategy and Tactics of Indian Revolution, this is the foundation document, we can say, if we want to understand the urban dimension. In this particular document, there are 13 chapters. The 13th chapter is on urban Maoism, or the urban work, in which they give the introductory framework of their urban work. And in the document, Urban Perspective, our work in urban areas, they cover the details of the urban work. Now, few important points we'll just go through about all these documents. So according to these documents, the Communist Party of India is the consolidated political vanguard of the Indian proletariat. So whatever their revolution they are going to bring in, so this CPI will be the vanguard. This will be the party which will lead this so-called revolution. MLM is the ideology, which is the basis. Immediate aim or program of the Communist Party, that means the Maoist party, is, in this case, it is the Maoist party because we are talking about the CPI Maoist. The immediate plan, the aim or program of the Communist Party is to carry on and complete the new democratic revolution. So according to them, the current situation in India is not the real democracy. So first they will bring democracy, and then they will take that democracy to the next level, and then they will achieve their aim of bringing in a communist state. So the new democratic revolution in India is part of the world proletariat revolution by overthrowing the semi-colonial, semi-feudal system. So this is how they describe India, the current India, according to Maoist, is semi-colonial and semi-feudal. Under neo-colonial form of indirect rule, so whatever system of governance we have, they are calling it as neo-colonial form of indirect rule, exploitation and control, and the 3 targets of our revolution: imperialism, feudalism, and CBB, that is comprador big bourgeois. So basically the crux of this particular point is the Maoist, the first step is they want to achieve new democratic revolution because according to them this is not democracy, and later on the next step is they want to achieve the communist state. The ultimate aim of maximum program of the party is the establishment of communist society. This new democratic revolution will be carried out and completed through armed agrarian revolution war, that is the protracted people's war, with area-wise seizure of power remaining as its central task. So in these documents, basically they are saying that CPI Maoist is the vanguard party, MLM is the ideology. First step is new democratic revolution. The last step is establishment of communist society. So whatever these Maoists are doing for years, so this is what they want to achieve at the end. The new democratic revolution will be carried out and completed through armed agrarian revolutionary war, so protracted people's war. So it is similar to what Mao did in China, encircling the cities from the countryside and thereby finally capturing them, will carry out the protracted people's war. Hence, the countryside as well as protracted people's war will remain as the center of gravity of the party's work from the very beginning. So the focus would be on the countryside. If you remember, in the first session we covered this, that many times it is projected that Maoists went to jungles for betterment of tribal. That is not the case. They went there because they wanted to establish revolutionary basis. They did not go there for social work. We need to understand this, that for social work, nobody needs to take up guns in hand. So whatever these important points we are covering, these are the sentences just copy pasted from the Maoist documents. The armed struggle will remain the highest and main form of struggle, and army as the highest form of organization of this revolution. Hence, armed struggle will play a decisive role. So Maoists do indulge in certain activities of forming mass organization, forming united front. However, the highest form of struggle for them is the armed struggle, the armed revolution. United Front will be built in the course of advancing armed struggle and for armed struggle. So primary thing is armed struggle. United Front will be raised to help that armed struggle. That we need to understand. Many times it happens that a few people, they have this thought process that they say that we are against the Maoists who are fighting with weapons in hand. So they are against the armed cadre as such or the violent means as such. However, there should not be a problem according to them uh, if the Maoist cadre they are functioning in cities. So the problem with this thought process is we need to understand that the Maoists themselves are saying that armed struggle is their primary aim, and whatever they are going to do in cities, it is a supportive thing. It is something which is going to further that armed struggle. So ultimately Maoists are going to come on, the ultimate aim is armed struggle only. So through that armed struggle they are going to overthrow this democracy. So allowing them to do whatever they want to do in urban areas, that won't serve the purpose. Mass organizations and mass struggles are necessary and indispensable, but their purpose is to serve the war. So Maoists do indulge in mass organizations and mass struggle. According to them, it is necessary and indispensable also, but their purpose is to serve the war. So they are not forming any mass organization for doing some social work. They are not forming mass organization for doing just civil rights activism. They are forming those mass organizations to serve the war and to further this armed struggle that we need to understand. Another thing, many times a question is raised that front organization, generally you will find that in these communication, it is always talked about the front organization. So what are those front organizations? Many people say that legally they are not defined. We need to understand that the Maoists themselves describe how they would function through various mass organizations, how they would form this united front. So they themselves are describing their way of working through the front organizations. So whether they are legally defined or not, that is something really immaterial, because a terrorist organization like CPI Maoist itself is saying that they would achieve their aims and goals of overthrowing this democracy through armed struggle, through front organizations or the United Front, and through their party. These are the three weapons they always talk about. So mass organizations and mass struggle, they play a very important role in overthrowing this democracy as far as CPI Maoist strategy is concerned. The immediate and most urgent task of the party is to establish full-fledged People's Liberation Army and base areas by developing and transforming the guerrilla zones. So basically they want to go on expanding the guerrilla zones, and they want to expand their small teams into a People's Liberation Army. Just after completing the NDR, that is New Democratic Revolution, the party will advance towards establishing socialism without any delay or interception. So first NDR, socialism, and ultimately the communist state. Because the NDR will already lay the basis for socialism, and hence there will be no pause. Thereafter, the party will continue to advance towards realizing communism by continuing the revolution under the dictatorship of the proletariat. So the ultimate aim is dictatorship of the proletariat. According to the strategy and tactics of Indian Revolution, that's the document by CPI Maoists, they say that there will be three magic weapons: party, united front, and armed cadre. So what do we mean by party? So this is that vanguard party which they talk about. So in this party, there are people who are convinced by the Maoist ideology. They are convinced by MLM. They are convinced that overthrowing democracy with armed struggle is the only way. And this party, which has uh, like certain decisive bodies in different forms, as central committee or politburo or military commission. So all these people in this party will take decisions, define strategies for their so-called revolution, which is actually anti-India war. So armed cadre is that those teams which work with weapons in hand in tribal areas. We see them in countryside. They work with work in the sense they fight with weapons in hand. So that is the armed cadre. That is one of the magic weapons according to CPI Maoist strategy. And united front. So what is this united front? We are going to see it in subsequent slides. So what we need to understand is this anti-India war is being fought in these three ways. So this party actually controls these two weapons, that is united front and armed cadre. The leadership in this party is mainly from the intellectual class. It is mainly from the urban areas. So that is about these three magic weapons. Now let us get into the details of the document Urban Perspective. It is a very lengthy document. What we are going to cover today is just the highlights of that document, which will help us understand the functioning of Maoist in urban areas. Now, Mao said that the final objective of the revolution is the capture of cities, the enemy's main bases, and this objective cannot be achieved without adequate work in the city. We need to understand this, that many people say that Maoists do not work in urban areas. That is not the case. Maoist, the ultimate aim, like their leader itself said that the final objective of the revolution is the capture of the cities, and they are the enemy's bases because government, that is according to them enemy, is stronger in these cities. So this objective cannot be achieved without adequate work in the cities, and that's why they work in cities since beginning. Though they want to attack cities or they want to capture power in cities in the last stage of their so-called revolution, but their work starts since beginning. Now in this same document, the Maoists say that work in the urban areas has a special importance in our revolutionary work. Now, the meaning of this revolutionary work is basically this anti-India war. In our revolution, which follows the line of protracted people's war, the liberation of urban areas will be possible only in the last stage of revolution. However, this does not mean that there is no need to concentrate on the building of urban revolutionary movement from the beginning. So basically, the Maoists, they do focus on forming urban revolutionary movement in cities, and they do it since beginning. They do not wait for the last stage of their so-called revolution, which according to us is the anti-India war. From the beginning, we will have to concentrate on the organization of the working class, which being the leadership of our revolution, has to directly participate and lead the agrarian revolution and the people's war, and on building a revolutionary workers movement. We need to understand that when Maoists say that MLM is their ideology, the crux of that is, as per Marxism, the workers play an important role. As per Leninism, vanguard party is required. And as per Maoism, protracted people's war and peasants are important. So if you see the functioning of Maoist, even in India, you'll find a combination of all these things. And that's the reason they are saying that MLM is their ideology. The urban movement is one of the main sources which provides cadres and leadership having various types of capabilities essential for the people's war and for the establishment of liberated areas. So this is something the Maoists themselves are saying, that why urban movement is important, because it is the main source which provides the cadres and leadership. If you remember, in the first session we have covered that the tribals, they did not pick up weapons against this government on their own. They were mobilized, they were influenced by the intellectual lot to do so. We should not forget the dialectical relationship between the development of the urban movement and the development of the People's War. In the absence of a strong revolutionary urban movement, the People's War will face difficulties. This is what the Maoists say. Now, what are the objectives of urban work? So, according to their strategy documents, urban work will help them build the united front, which is one of their magic weapons. It will also form, uh, help them in mass mobilization and party building, and it will also help them in military tasks. So one thing which we need to notice here is, according to Maoist, they also focus on the military tasks in urban areas as well, though it is generally visible that the armed activities are there in the outskirts or in the countryside more. However, as per their strategy, they do believe in military tasks in urban areas as well. Now let us take a look. So what are the military tasks of this urban movement? Defense of the urban. So there are two tasks basically. One is some are the political tasks and some are the military tasks, which are important, for which it is important for the Maoists to work in urban areas. So which all military tasks the Maoists indulge in or will indulge in as far as urban areas are concerned? So these are the ones. Defense of the urban movement. So they plan according to their strategy documents. They want secret self-defense squads, open self-defense teams, urban militia, local intelligence. Now, another aspect is this particular urban movement will also uh, help the rural armed struggle, work in key industries, infiltration into the enemy camp, sending cadres to the rural areas, logistical support to the armed struggle. So basically, the urban work will help the Maoist in defense of the urban movement. It will also help the rural armed struggle. And the third thing is urban military operation under central direction. Now, what do we mean by central direction? That means their party leadership, certain activities will be done directly the higher leadership. Otherwise, the Maoists believe in decentralization of functioning. So the strategy is central, but the way of functioning is mostly decentralized. So the teams work in decentralized manner. However, some teams, according to them, would work under the central direction, that is city action team, central intelligence, and cyber warfare. It is important to note here that Maoists are talking about cyber warfare as well. As far as mass organizations are concerned, so in this slide we saw that one is they want to build united front. Another thing is they want to build they want to do mass mobilization and build party and military tasks. So the first slide we saw is of the military task. Another thing is, let us take a look at mass mobilization. So Maoists, they form different types of mass organizations. So as per their strategy document, it says that those organizations which openly propagate party politics should generally function secretly. So some organizations function secretly, some organizations, they work openly. Those organizations functioning openly and legally generally cannot openly identify with the party and should work under some cover with a limited program. So it is important here to understand that certain mass organizations of the Maoists, they work for the Maoist party. However, they do not openly identify with the party. They pretend to be working either as civil rights activists, or they pretend to be working for society, for betterment of society. But the ultimate aim of such organizations is basically to mobilize people for CPI Maoist. Now, the biggest challenge in this is to understand the difference between the genuine organizations which are actually working for society and those organizations which pretend to be working for society but actually end up working for CPI Maoist. So this is the biggest challenge in this subject, and whatever controversy we generally find or we generally come across as far as uh, arrest of Maoists are concerned, or uh, any kind of anti-Maoism propaganda is concerned, not propaganda, I would say, any kind of anti-Maoist action is concerned, the biggest challenge is many times people do not know, and it is actually difficult to understand that which is the genuine organization, which is not the genuine organization. And sometimes people end up supporting those organizations which actually work for CPI Maoists, thinking that these are the genuine organizations. So all those who support or who say that urban Maoism does not exist, they do it with not just with that intention of, you know, supporting Maoist. Sometimes it may be because of ignorance. Sometimes it may be because they are convinced that the organizations which are actually CPI Maoist organizations, but these people are convinced that no, they are civil rights activists or they are genuine organizations. So calling such people as Maoist or calling such people as supporter of Maoist will actually help the Maoist. Now, why I'm saying this? Because imagine a situation that, suppose there is a organization which works for CPI Maoist, there is another organization which actually works for genuine cause. Now, when people who are actually working for that organization which works for CPI Maoist, but according to them it is a genuine organization, if we start calling them anti-India people, or if you start calling them supporters of Maoist without them knowing how Maoist function, without them knowing that there are such kind of mass organizations which pretend to be genuine organizations but they are not genuine, and if you just target them that okay, you are Maoist or you're supporting Maoist, then that will not serve the purpose. They will start defending those organizations more. So the approach which is required in this case is educating those people that the organizations which according to them are not Maoist are actually Maoist organizations. Now it is another challenging thing because not all organizations are declared as front organizations of Maoist. Some of them, they do work for Maoist, but they are not declared as front organizations. So this is another challenge in this subject. So mass mobilization through mass organizations, it happens in different ways. So certain mass organizations are secret revolutionary mass organizations, which are working for the party, but they are very secretly working and they are not actually indulging too much in the uh, open activities. Then certain organizations are open revolutionary mass organizations. Then there are certain open legal mass organizations. Maoists also work in a way that they try and enter existing organizations. They try and capture important roles in those organizations, and they try and use those organizations to further their propaganda or their agenda. So it is like, in nutshell, they either form their own organizations or they enter the existing organizations and they try to use those organizations for Maoist agenda. So till now, we saw two things. What are the military tasks as far as urban work of Maoist is concerned? Second thing, we saw that how mass mobilization happens, how Maoists form different mass organizations. The third thing is, one of the important work for the Maoist in urban areas is form united front. If you remember that slide in which Maoists say that there are three magic weapons, so another magic weapon, like one of the magic weapons according to Maoist is united front. Now, what is this united front? So this united front is basically a unity of different people who actually help in furthering the Maoist agenda. So these are different unities which the Maoists talk about. So sometimes there are tactical united fronts, sometimes there are strategic united fronts. So these are basically the long-term united front, or the long-term what do you say, unity will be called as strategic united front. The short-term unity with limited agendas would be called as tactical united front. So it is like working class unity, worker peasant alliance, unity of urban exploited classes, relations with national bourgeois, front against repression, united front against Hindu fascist forces, and front against LPG. LPG is liberalization, globalization, privatization. So in nutshell, if we want to understand, so basically in simple language, Maoists want to mobilize people and they want to organize them. So all these big names, United Front and everything, so that is nothing but organizing people so that those people can be used for the Maoist party. That is the crux of this slide. Now just we'll see how the process happens. Now this is a very, uh, what I say, it's at a very broader level. I'm telling you how the process happens. We are not getting into too many details, how the party is formed. So it is like activist groups, like imagine a situation that some activist groups are functioning and they take up a cause. That cause may be that giving people their properties back, or making sure that people get the right kind of compensation for their lands which are taken by government for certain development projects. So such activist groups formed. Slowly certain people from these activist groups are picked, their political education starts, that politicization starts, and then once they are convinced about the Maoist ideology. They are convinced that, okay, this is the only way, this is how Maoism should, or this is like the armed struggle is the only way, this is how uh, India should go forward. Once they are convinced with that, then they will be part of party cells and they will function for the Maoist party. Now, this is something at a very broader level I'm telling you. So this is how the party is formed. So in the party, there are mass organizations, certain activist groups, party fractions are also there. Then later, party cells are there. Sometimes there are uh, permanent members, or what do you call, the professionals are there. Sometimes part-time people are there. So some people who are fully dedicated to the Maoist party, some people are part-time working for that Maoist party. So that is how this party generally functions. Now let us look into uh, the dimension that whether this urban Maoism started recently or it has been there since beginning. So these are certain declassified documents. So this was CI report on Maoist October 1970. If you see that report, the report says that although it still insists on the theoretical primacy of rural guerrilla warfare. So that basically this report is about CPI-ML. So that time, this is a report of 1970. So 69 CPI-ML was formed. So it says that although it still insists on the theoretical primacy of rural guerrilla warfare, the CPI-ML has begun to develop justification for its increasing emphasis on the urban terrorism. At its All India Congress held in Bombay in May 1970. Now let us see this, they are talking about 70s. So CPI-ML, the Naxalite party, so their All India Congress happened in Bombay. Party leaders asserted that efforts should continue in both large urban areas and in the countryside. So since then only they are emphasizing that there should be work in urban areas as well. Party workers, however, were urged henceforth to concentrate on gaining control of the village peasants' committees rather than wasting time and personnel on the land seizure movement. Now, here again, this talks about their priorities as well. In this manner, it was argued the rural masses would become politicized and made ready for the violent struggle to come. Urban CPI ML cadre were admonished to continue to press students to participate in the disruption of educational institutions so that eventually all universities and colleges would be closed and their student bodies polarized. Now, let us understand one thing. So this is 70s. So in China, 66 to 76 was the time of Chinese Cultural Revolution, in which the students were used by Mao as red guards and they were involved in all kinds of disruption activities. Similar things, in my view, are being copied here by CPI ML, and that's the reason they are focusing on students and they want them to participate in the disruption of educational institutions. So there have been instances in 70s that certain colleges, universities in Kolkata and even in Bombay, they had to be closed for some time because of this Nakshal related activities, or the cadres who were students and linked with CPI ML, they made sure that universities are closed or colleges are closed, and for various reasons. So the crux is the Maoists have been focusing on urban areas since beginning, so it is not a new phenomenon. What is new is the urban perspective, that document which they drafted. So they drafted it in like after 2004, the CPI Maoist was formed, and later on that drafting took place. So that is something which is new. But otherwise, the focus of Maoists in urban areas and even their activities in urban areas is not a new thing. Let us just get into few more details just to give you an idea that urban Maoism or the urban activities of Maoist was there even before this Elgar related case, and there are like certain legal actions were taken against them. So in the year 2006, Union Home Minister Shivraj Patil, he made a statement in Lok Sabha that the Maoists are focusing on the infrastructure in urban areas. He also said that the way jungles are suitable for the Maoists to hide, similarly, urban areas are also suitable for them. In the year 2011, Kabir Kalamanch activists were arrested. So you'll find Jyoti Jagtap in this. And so Sagar Gorkhe, Ramesh Gaitsor, Jyoti Jagtap, so these people were linked with Kabir Kalamanch. So there have been actions against the Kabir Kalamanch activists earlier also. In fact, in the year 2010, one training camp took place at a place called Khed, which is near Pune. In that camp, certain leaders from CPI Maoist also participated. As per the news report, it says that certain leaders from the CPI Maoist participated. So Milind Teltumbde, who is also known as Sahyadri Jyotiba, who is one of the accused in recent charge sheet which was filed by NIA. So he was also part of that training camp. In that training camp, few students from Pune they participated there, and the place where that training camp happened, so it was a room taken from a local villager there. He was told that few teachers and students would be participating in that training camp, and it was a educational kind of training. I mean, it was something to do with training of teachers. However, actually when that camp happened, it was to propagate the Maoist ideology, and it was the political training of this CPI Maoist party. That is what was told as per news. Kabir Kalamanch people also participated in that training. Later on, few of them were arrested also for their links with CPI Maoist. Two of them, they went underground. So Sheetal Sathe and Sachin Madi were both of them, they went underground, and later on they surrendered in 2013. Same Kabir Kalamanch was involved in organization of this Elgar Parishad. It is important to understand here that the number of organizations involved in organizing Elgar Parishad were approximately 100. That is what they claim. So not all organizations are being called as Maoist. Only people from two organizations have been arrested for their Maoist links. One is Kabir Kalamanch and another is Republican Panther. In the second session, which we covered in the month of September, we have gone into the details of both these organizations. So the crux is, in the year 2006, Union Home Minister already talked about this, gave statement about this. In the year 2011, people were arrested, and this is just, I'm talking about Maharashtra. Apart from that, in different states, certain activities or certain arrests did happen. November 2013, MHA filed an affidavit before the Supreme Court. That affidavit mentioned that the Maoists in urban areas are more dangerous than those in jungle areas. Apart from that, this particular affidavit also mention that it is difficult to take action against the urban cadre of Maoist because of their propaganda mechanism, because their propaganda mechanism works so strongly that whenever any government or police agencies, if they try and take any action against the Maoist, then the the propaganda mechanism of those Maoists, they spoil the trustworthiness of the government and the agencies through their propaganda, and that makes it difficult for the agencies or the government to take action. Exactly the same thing we are seeing in 2018 when people were arrested for this Elgar links and for their links with the Maoist party. In the year February 2014, a list of front organizations was declared by UPA government. So that time a question was raised about the Maoist activities in urban areas. As an answer to that question, RPN Singh, who was the Minister of State, he replied on 18th of February 2014. He mentioned in this answer that how the Maoists work in urban areas. Here it was mentioned that on occasions during operations by security forces, the CPI Maoist underground cadre shift to softer areas, including urban areas, looking for safe hideouts. On such occasions, the overground front organizations provide safe hideouts to armed cadre. Now, this is something which is on record, which was mentioned in Lok Sabha as an answer to a question by MOS of Home Ministry. The front organizations also facilitate procurement of supplies, etc., to the Maoist war machinery. They also initiate legal action on various issues to slow down the enforcement regime. They are also adept at dissemination of propaganda and disinformation to demonize the state. Demonize is the word used, and the security forces. Of late, it has also come to notice that members of such front organizations are mentoring professional revolutionaries, which are also called as PRs, to be inducted into the underground movement. So this is what is on record, and it was on 18th of February 2014. Apart from that, it also said that activities of the CPI Maoist and its front organizations are closely monitored and suitable action wherever warranted is taken by the state governments concerned. Here, a list of 74 front organizations was declared. We'll just go through few of them. So this is Revolutionary Writers Association. So Varvara Rao is one of the founding members of this Revolutionary Writers Association. Democratic Students Union. So if you remember, Umar Khalid is the leader of DS. He was the leader of DSU, and this same DSU, they even opposed one program of our president that time, Dr. Pranab Mukherjee in JNU. And the reasons they gave was because they called Dr. Pranab Mukherjee as Hangman Mukherjee because uh, of this Afzal Guru case. So that is how these organizations have been working. Apart from that, this organization, Revolutionary Democratic Front, so this particular organization has several other organizations linked with it. Revolutionary Democratic Front, the secretary of this Revolutionary Democratic Front was G.N. Sai Baba, who was convicted as Maoist for his links with CPI Maoist by Gadchiroli court. Indian Association of People's Lawyers, so Sudha Bharadwaj and Surendra Gadling, both of them are linked with this organization. This Committee for Release of Political Prisoners. So Rona Wilson is linked with this organization. He was, I think, some office bearer of this organization. So then another is Committee Against Violence on Women. So this is Shoma Sen's organization. So these are just a few names which were enlisted that time in Lok Sabha. That does not mean that only these many organizations exist. There are many more organizations exist. Certain names came out in the GN Sai Baba case also. You must have heard about this Persecuted Prisoners Solidarity Committee. So these are the people who are arrested now. Stan Swami's photo is missing in this. That should have been added. So Persecuted Prisoners Solidarity Committee, this particular organization's name came there in GN Sai Baba's case also. This Deshabhakti Yuva Manch, though it is not declared as a Maoist front organization as such, however, this Arun Ferreira, he was accused of working for Maoist. He was arrested also by Maharashtra police. Later on, he was acquitted. And Arun Bhelke and his wife, they are in jail currently. They were linked with this Deshabhakti Yuva Manch, and allegedly they were involved in mobilizing people and recruiting people for CPI Maoist through this particular organization. Rest of the names we have already seen. This Kabir Kalamanch name was also there in that list which was declared here. This Kabir Kalamanch is also there, which was there in organizing this Elgar Parishad. Now we'll just go through few examples that will give us an idea how this urban cadre actually functions. So we have just gone through important aspects, important dimensions of the theory. Now let us go through few examples so that we can correlate some aspects of that theory, and it will help us understand the theory better. So Sridhar Srinivasan was the Central Committee member of CPI Maoist. He was arrested in 2007 for his Maoist links and was convicted also. In the year 2015, he died because of heart attack. When Sridhar was arrested in 2007, in fact, Sridhar and Vernon Gonsalves, both of them were arrested together. Both of them were convicted for their work with CPI Maoist. So for their links and their active participation in a proscribed terrorist organization called CPI Maoist. The same Vernon Gonsalves, this photo here, he is currently in jail in Elgar Parishad case. Let us now get into a few details of Sridhar Srinivasan. So Sridhar Srinivasan was highly intellectual, highly educated person. He was in Mumbai. He was a student of Elphinstone College. Later on in Mumbai University, as a student, he was involved in various activities of mobilizing students for the Nakshal movement. He also worked with certain trade unions in Mumbai, in Thane, Surat, these areas, in which he tried to influence people in trade union towards militant activities. Later on, he was asked by the CPI Maoist party to move to Vidarbha, which is another place in Maharashtra. He started working with the mine workers in that area, and later on he went underground, and he also worked for the underground cadres. In the year 2013, when he was set free from jail after undergoing the punishment, Again, he started working for CPI Maoist. In the year 2015, he was somewhere there on the Andhra Odisha border, and he was going to meet the Maoist leadership only. That's what being said, where he uh, underwent heart attack, and after that he died. After his death, certain programs were conducted in Mumbai. We already saw the details of those programs in our second session of this series. So this is just to give you an idea that Maoists do work in urban areas. So people like Sridhar, they worked in among students, they worked amongst trade union people, and they worked amongst mine workers and tribals as well. Now, when we say they worked, that does not mean that they were working for betterment of those people. That means they were mobilizing those people and politicizing them for this Maoist ideology so that some of them could join the underground movement and some of them can be part of the United Front in urban areas. Vernon Gonsalves is currently in jail. Vernon Gonsalves' wife is Susan Abraham. She is a lawyer. And there was a program which used to happen in Mumbai, Anuradha Gandhi Memorial Lecture. So Susan Abraham gave interviews to media on behalf of the organizing team of that lecture. Who was Anuradha Gandhi? We will get into the details of it. She herself was a Central Committee member of CPI Maoist. So these are two examples of convicted Maoists who were highly educated and who were working for CPI Maoist. And it is not that just the court says so, even after the death of Sridhar Srinivasan, CPI Maoist issued a press statement saying that how great a revolutionary this Sridhar was. So according to them, whenever Maoists talk about these Maoist cadres, they call them revolutionaries. For 40 years, this Sridhar Srinivasan worked for Maoist, and later in 2015 he died. Varvara Rao, he has been in news for quite some time. Recently, few days back, his wife went to Supreme Court asking bail for him, stating the reason of on medical grounds she asked for bail, and it was repeatedly mentioned that he is 81 years old and all that. This Varvara Rao is being described in most of the news nowadays as a civil rights activist or a poet. Whether he is a poet, yes, he is. However, will you call a person who is clearly saying, openly saying that this current parliamentary democracy is not the way of governance, it's not the right way of governance. The only best way of governance is what CPI Maoist wants, and that is what Varvara Rao has said many times in front of media also. These are certain statements by Varvara Rao, which were this was the interview given to Rediff, I think it was in 97 or so, wherein he was asked which rule do you prefer at the center, the Congress rule all these years or the new coalition of anti-Congress parties. So his answer is the question of preference does not arise at all. We reject the parliamentary path. But let me make a point. How can you say that United Front is UF is anti-Congress when they are fully dependent on the Congress? The constitution states the government would be in power at the will of the president, but the present government is surviving at the will of the Congress president because whatever. So the other part is secondary. The important part is the question of preference does not arise at all. We reject the parliamentary path. Secondly, he was asked, are you saying that the whole system should be discarded because of the current situation? No, not because of the current situation. We have been saying for the last 30 years that parliamentary system does not suit an agrarian society in principle. It is a consequence of certain dialectical development. Capitalism came into England and France by demolishing the whole feudal system existing there and bringing industrial revolution. In an agrarian society like India, we did not pass through these dialectical developments. So basically, they are saying at the end, they are happy. So you can't expect capitalist developments here in the true sense. Hence, the parliamentary system does not suit our country. The only solution to it to follow the path of Naxalbari and free ourselves from these semi-phase, semi-colonial forces, paving way to real democracy. You can't fight it without taking arms in your hands. This particular interview is available on internet. You can, if you search for Varvara Rao interview Rediff, you'll find these details. I think some person named Sardesai only interviewed him. This same Varvara Rao has given interviews to many news channels saying that parliamentary democracy is not the way forward. He, in fact, also explained the role or the idea of PWG, People's War Group, which was one of the factions of Maoist. Despite all these things, this Varvara Rao is being described as a civil rights activist or human rights activist. The question is, how can you call a person who is openly supporting that you can't fight it without taking arms in hand? He has many times mentioned this, that armed struggle is the only way forward. Not just once, many times. In fact, when I went to interview him and when I asked him about like how can you support violence, so that time also, without any hesitation, he supported violence. So we need to understand this, that when a person has so many digital footprints, wherein he is clearly saying that violent ways are the only ways, still the person is being labeled as human rights activist or civil rights activist. So the problem is either in understanding, but when digital footprints are already there, and despite that, if a person is being labeled as a civil rights activist or human rights activist, that means it is not problem of understanding or ignorance. It means it is an intentional effort to project him in such a way. So this is Anuradha Gandhi. She was the Central Committee member of CPI Maoist. She died in the year, I think, 2008. This Anuradha Gandhi, when I happened to read about her in Times of India, so there was an article by a lady named Jyoti Punwani. She's a journalist. She wrote an article in Times of India. Currently, she writes for. In that article, Jyoti Punwani said the last paragraph of this article is the Naxalite menace, says Manmohan Singh, that time Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, is the biggest threat to the country. But I remember a girl who was always laughing and gave up a life rich in every way to change the lives of others. Now, this is the description. When I read this, I was a bit confused because it was just a beginning of understanding Maoism. That time I happened to come across this article. So I was a bit confused that whether this particular lady was actually working for betterment of people. That was the question I had. That confusion got resolved when I happened to visit Chhattisgarh and I happened to meet a person named Hare Ram. This Hare Ram was a surrendered Maoist who worked for Maoist for 14 years. When I had a discussion with Hare Ram, he was telling that Anuradha Gandhi recruited him. She used to go to his house twice or thrice. She went there and she encouraged him to join Maoism, the Maoist uh, groups who were functional there that time. He joined them, he started working for them, he started recruiting for them. He was telling that uh, whenever Anuradha Gandhi used to go there, she never told her real name. The name was a different name was told that time. I think Janaki or something was told. He also said, interestingly, during that conversation, that Anuradha Gandhi achhi thi. So I was again shocked that here is one more person telling me that Anuradha Gandhi achhi thi. So I asked him ki kyun achhi thi? So he said that rest of the Maoist leaders, they used to make them carry weapons and pittus. The senior leaders, they used to make the juniors carry weapons and pittus for uh, and Anuradha Gandhi was the only person who used to carry her weapon and pittu on her own, and that's why वो अच्छी थी. So this is the situation. This same Anuradha Gandhi in 80s, she started one organization called Committee for Protection of Democratic Rights, CPDR. Recent secretary of this CPDR was Anand Teltumbde, who is under arrest currently in Elgar Parishad case. So in 80s, in Mumbai, Anuradha Gandhi is running an organization called Committee for Protection of Democratic Rights. And the same Anuradha Gandhi was later working in tribal areas with weapon in her hand. In fact, as per the book Hello Bastar by Rahul Pandita, it is mentioned there that Anuradha Gandhi participated in one of the encounters from the Maoist side, and she fired also. That is what it mentions. In the same book, it is mentioned that Surendra Gadling used to consider her as inspiration, and because of her, he decided to go for legal education. Anuradha Gandhi recruited Hare Ram. Hare Ram was telling that he recruited almost 300 people for the Maoist, girls and boys both. While talking to him, he was very proudly saying that, people, the villagers used to trust him so much. So he was telling that they used to trust him, and whenever the police party used to move out of police station, he used to get tip from the villagers. He was very proudly saying that he recruited 300 people, and in fact he had two brothers and three sisters. So I asked him, ki, out of your siblings, how many you recruited in this Maoist cadre, Maoist dalam? So he said none of them. I said, why? I was surprised because a man is here who is claiming that he recruited 300 people, and none of them, like the siblings, like none of them he recruited for this. So when I asked him the reason, his statement was कि मेरी जिंदगी खराब हो गई थी, उनकी जिंदगी क्यों खराब करना? So my life was spoiled. Why to spoil their life? This is the hypocrisy of Maoist at all the levels. But he was not bothered about spoiling lives of those 300 whom he recruited. We do not know how many police officers or those people might have killed. And for the death of those people, for those 300 recruited, their lives were spoiled. For those people, the root cause is Anuradha Gandhi. That Anuradha Gandhi, who was otherwise fighting with weapon in her hand there in tribal areas, but in Mumbai she used to talk about democracy and democratic rights. This is the hypocrisy which is seen at all levels of these Maoists. They claim that they work for betterment of people, and they are glorified by people like Jyoti Punwadi in uh, the way she glorified Anuradha Gandhi in this article, that she went there to change lives of others. Is that called changing lives, or is that called spoiling lives of people? That question we need to ask ourselves. So this is how these people work. This Anuradha Gandhi, she herself was a postgraduate, highly educated, very talented. She was working as a professor. I think she was also linked with Elphinstone College. She also worked in Jhunjhunwala College in Mumbai. Later on, she went to Nagpur. She started teaching there in one of the colleges. She also uh, resided in this place called Indora, where you're more of Dalit majority stays, and there she tried to influence people. That is what the memoir published by JNU in the memory of Anuradha Gandhi after her death. In that memoir, it is mentioned that she used to work, she used to stay in Indora, and she became the face of Maoist in that area. The same Anuradha Gandhi used to insist that Pune is an opinion maker city. So you'll find students from different parts of India coming to Pune. So if you want to set up any narrative in different parts of the country, then it can be done through Pune, because those were the days when social media was not there. So she started working in Pune as well. She used to visit the Kabir Kalamanch founder. In fact, the founder of Kabir Kalamanch, so in the year 2002 it was founded, and Amarnath Chandalia is the name of the person who founded it. So in one of his statements in front of the magistrate, so as per news, he gave a statement saying that Anuradha Gandhi used to give him 4,000 rupees, and that money she used to give for Kabir Kalamanch, and she used to say that that money was from Nakshal tax. So whatever amount or whatever money the Maoists get through extortion, they call it Nakshal tax. So she used to give that money to Amarnath Chandalia. That is what the statement says as per news. So this is how these people work. When certain accused were arrested in Elgar Parishad case, one point was repeatedly raised, that these people are highly educated, intellectual, sophisticated background they come from. How can they be Maoist? How can they be Naxalite? It is important to understand that the leadership of proscribed terrorist organizations, CPI Maoist, comes from highly intellectual, highly uh, talented people who come from very sophisticated backgrounds. So the leadership itself is from the urban areas, and they use tribals for achieving their hidden motives or their ulterior motives. They project a picture, they paint a picture saying that they are working for betterment of society, they are working for betterment of people, but they do not even let development happen there. In the first session, we covered what kind of things, what all activities Maoists are indulging in those tribal areas, how they are opposing development. So this is their real face. However, their propaganda mechanism is so strong that last 50 years they have been projected as Robin Hoods of the society. This is GN Sai Baba. It is said that in the year 91, actually he shifted to Delhi in 91, he was basically from Andhra. And it is said that he shifted there because the CPI Maoist asked him to shift. In the year September 20, in the year 2013, September, certain raids took place by Pune police, by Maharashtra police, uh, on his residence. Certain material was recovered. It is the same process, the way it was followed in Elgar Parishad case. Raids happened, material was recovered. After that, GN Sai Baba was arrested in the year March 2014. He got convicted. He was given life imprisonment by Gadchiroli court. This GN Sai Baba was the RDF secretary, Revolutionary Democratic Front secretary. In the year 2012, when the first national conference of this RDF took place in Hyderabad, that time he was elected as secretary. That time, all these people, like some of them who are now Elgar accused, they were present. Like, for example, Shoma Sen, Varvara Rao, GN Sai Baba, Anand Teltumbde, all these people were present for that national level conference of this RDF. And if you see, this RDF was part of that list which we saw, which was declared in Lok Sabha. So when he got convicted, after his arrest, firstly, he was suspended. As per rules, that suspension was required. Inquiry committee was set up and he was suspended. Interestingly, after his conviction, his termination should have happened. This Ramlal Anand College from Delhi, they initiated a process for his termination. It was sent to Delhi University. However, his termination did not happen, and because of that, as per news, till date, he's getting the suspension allowance. So as per news, till August 2020, so in 2017, he got convicted. He got life imprisonment. Currently, he's in jail. So from 2017 till August 2020, because the news is from August 2020, he received almost some 14 lakh rupees as suspension allowance just because he was not terminated, so his suspension allowance could not stop. Now, why he was not terminated, that's a question for which I also do not have answer. But when I spoke to the person who was member of the inquiry committee, which was involved in suspension, he said that the required procedure was initiated by the college, but it was not completed by the university. Now, why the university did not take action, that's a question remains. When GN Sai Baba got arrested, immediately GN Sai Baba Defense Committee was formed. So this is one more pattern you would find, that whenever people are arrested for their links with CPI Maoist or they are accused as Maoist, then the defense committees are formed, and you will find that people with national and international uh, reputation, people who are considered as highly intellectual, generally those kind of people are part of such defense committees. Then they will issue statements in media saying that how the person who is accused has nothing to do with Maoism, and the person is a civil rights activist or whatever rights activist. Similar thing happened in Sridhar Srinivasan's case also, that when Sridhar Srinivasan was arrested, it was mentioned that he has nothing to do with CPI Maoist. So this is a typical way these people function. In fact, this United Nations UNH, this high Human Rights Commissioner's office, they issued a statement also saying that UN experts urge India to release rights defender Dr. GN Sai Baba on health grounds. And this particular statement also mentions, it also raises questions about the legal procedure which was followed by Gadchiroli court. The question is, how come so much interest is being taken in only in cases like the intellectual lot of CPI Maoist? One more interesting thing is, in the year 2003, this GN Sai Baba, he wrote a letter and he sent it to the Central Committee of CPI Maoist. In that letter, he mentions that he is being discriminated against because of his physical disabilities. And he also mentioned in this letter that qualitatively and quantitatively, he can perform better if he is given a task of underground cadre. However, he is being discriminated against because of his physical disability. So that is something which he complained about. And he insisted that he should be given those responsibilities which are related to underground movement. Now, here we need to understand that this underground movement in jungles, it is a very tough kind of lifestyle. This GN Sai Baba, when he got arrested, these people are repeatedly mentioning that his physical situation should be considered when he is in jail, and they are repeatedly giving excuse of his physical disabilities for defending him or for getting him bail. However, same GN Sai Baba did not have any problem when he demanded to go to jungles or to get underground responsibilities of CPI Maoist. So that time he felt that he can do qualitatively and quantitatively, he can do much better than any of these Maoist cadre. But when it comes to jail, when it comes to legal procedures, whenever legal action is taken against government, taken by government or by any state police, then suddenly these excuses are used to get bail or to get sympathy. We talked about this national conference which happened in April 2012 at Hyderabad, the RDF conference, Revolutionary Democratic Front conference. In this particular conference, Anand Teltumbde made a statement that the need of the hour is to reinvent Dalit militancy as well as revolutionary resurgence under Maoist leadership. There are other people also who also made different statements in that particular conference. In fact, this RDF report, which is available online as well, it is not published by any agency, or it is not any recovered report kind of. It is something which is there online, and it was published by different sister organizations of RDF, in which they are clearly talking about Maoists, they are clearly talking about certain Maoist activities, they are glorifying them, they are talking about like where people like Anand Teltumbde made these statements. So openly these people are making all these statements. However, when these people are getting arrested in Elgar Parishad case, suddenly, instead of questioning all these statements, even though these statements are available in public domain, instead of questioning these statements, the government action is being questioned. And that is something which actually kind of further the CPI Maoist propaganda. In fact, I did one video. There is a YouTube channel called Standpoint, on which one video you would find Anand Teltumre's contribution towards Maoist front organizations. So that basically talks about which all Maoist front organizations on where Anand Teltumre delivered sessions, he went there or he made certain statements. So that gives an idea of the links of Anand Teltumre with these Maoist front organizations. Now, whether these people are actually working for CPI Maoist, conspiring for CPI Maoist, that decision will be given by court for sure. However, as citizens of the country, we need to raise certain questions based on this data which is available online, which is available in public domain, that why these people like Varvara Rao, Anand Teltumre, who are making all these open statements which are actually in support of Maoist, which are actually against democracy, which are actually against the democratic ways, and which are and will hamper the human rights of people, how such people can be called as civil rights activists or human rights activists? So that question we need to raise. With this, I stop here.
First question is, why are the Maoists primarily against Hindus? Why the Tatas are supporting these propagandists or related publishers and media? And why is the government not banning CPI party legally? This was my question also, that it's a formal national party, and
It is
despite all
banned,
their,
it is already banned.
all right,
Yeah.
and then is closely followed by the Maoist propaganda. It is still seen as anti-Maoist. Why?
So, first is why the Maoists are anti Hindu. One thing is, in my understanding, so if you see that United Front, that slide, if we refer to, they talk about Hindu fascist forces. So they basically want to mobilize all possible people in all possible ways. They mobilize students, they mobilize women. So does that mean that they are really very much bothered about students? Does that mean that really they are very much bothered about women? Not really. They want to use that particular thing to mobilize people. Similarly, they do want to mobilize minorities in the interest of their party, in the interest of their so-called revolution. Now, if they want to do that, they need some enemy in front. So, in that case, who is that enemy? So, it is obviously Hindus, but they do not want to project themselves as anti Hindu also. So, they project themselves as we are against the Hindu fascist forces. That is how they project. So, that means they are against the radical aspect. That is how they project. So, the crux is, see, it is like, does that mean that they will support these minorities forever? In my view, no. Once they achieve whatever they want to achieve, after that they will start killing each other or whatever. They will, in fact, like even in case of national bourgeois, so they say that they want to use national bourgeois, but that is still a certain phase. Beyond that phase, they will start killing those national bourgeois also. So it is a very convenient kind of arrangement. That is what I would say. Another thing is, especially in the current situation, as I see, and this is my opinion, which may be wrong, it is like now because BJP government is in power, so it is easier for them to mobilize people against the government in the name of working against anti-Hindu fascist forces. What does that mean? They will tell people that, see, this government is Hindu fascist. They always use that word. This is Brahminical, this is Hindu fascist, all those kind of words they use. Now, how that helps their working? Once it is called as Hindu fascist, so all those people who are against that uh, Hindutva thing, so it is easier to mobilize those people. Second thing is, once you call Brahminical, so it is easier to mobilize certain caste. So these are the reasons why certain words are being used by these people. So people think that, they are just opposing BJP or they are opposing a Hindutva party. But in the long run, what the Maoists want is, they are not bothered whether there is Congress or BJP. They do not want either of them there. Ultimately, they want to get rid of democracy. That is the ultimate aim. So in that process, whoever they can use, and use is the word I would prefer, whoever they want to use in whatever ways, they are using them. So that is one of the reasons why they are anti-Hindu in a way, but they don't call themselves anti-Hindu. They say that they are working against Hindu fascism. That is the word they use. Another question, you said that why it is not banned. It is a banned party. So CPI Maoist, if you remember, I told this in the first and second session also, that CPI Maoist, though it is Communist Party of India into bracket Maoist, so many times people think that because it is Communist Party of India, which is part of that name, many times people think that it is a party which fights elections or which is kind of approved by election commission. No, CPI Maoist is a banned, it's a proscribed terrorist organization, and not just CPI Maoist, even the front organizations of CPI Maoist. Now next question which comes is ki, if the front organizations are proscribed, if they are banned, how can they operate? Now it is a very tricky situation. There are certain legal loopholes also. So it is really difficult to prove that certain organizations are working for CPI Maoist. It is difficult to prove that they are recruiting for them, they are funding them, they are furthering their propaganda. So till the time all these things are not proven in court, it is difficult to take legal action against these organizations. So that is one of the challenges in this whole subject. Probably next month, when we are going to get into the legal aspects, I'm not a legal expert myself, but whatever little I know, probably I will be able to explain it somewhat better, that what are the actual challenges as far as banning of these front organizations or restricting the functioning of these front organizations is concerned. So, legal loopholes is one thing, and getting suitable evidence to prove that yes, they are working for this particular organization is something, another challenge. So, like many times, people say that this Varvara Rao, there were more than 50 cases against him, and he was acquitted. Now, actually, this is a challenge. He openly supports PWG and all that, but still, he is not convicted. That is a challenge. But that does not mean that in Elgar Parishad he won't be convicted. People say that he was acquitted in all those cases, so that means he is not a Maoist. He openly himself says that he is a Maoist. Nobody else needs to say that. The problem is you have to prove that he was involved in some conspiracy, in some violent activities, in recruiting, in fundraising. All those things we need to prove in court, so that is a problem. What was another question?
If Congress is in alliance with CPI, why is it still seen as an anti-Maoist?
See, let us understand one thing. Unfortunately, what happens is that uh, people like to label political parties as supporters of Maoist for to further their own political agendas. If we talk about Congress, then more than I think some 23 leaders of Congress were killed in Chhattisgarh alone. You might have heard about this Jiram Ghati uh, massacre, so wherein Mahendra Karma was killed. So this Mahendra Karma was killed by Maoist. Mahendra Karma was a Congress person. He was a Congress leader. Then there was one more, Mr. Shukla was also killed. He was also a Congress leader. So we need to understand that even like unfortunately this what do you call P. Chidambaram. So when not unfortunately that time fortunately when he was the home minister, he did take action against these Maoists. Now unfortunately what is happening is when this Elgar arrest took place, then he is making statements that which are kind of giving a message that these are not really legal or there is some problem with these arrests. The same person made statements. The affidavit which was filed in Supreme Court, the list of front organizations which were declared, it was declared during UPA rule. So the problem is, even in case of like, if I talk about Maharashtra, so the NCP leader Sharad Pawar, he made a statement about that these people are Dalit activists or some civil rights activists. His own party person, Mr. R.R. Patil, who was the Home Minister of Maharashtra during, I think, 2011, 2013, that time when actions were taken place against these Kabir Kalamanch people, that time this same like R.R. Patil himself took action against, I mean, nobody in Maharashtra took action against the urban cadre of Maoists the way R.R. Patil did it. But unfortunately, now for political reasons, the leader of the same party is making statements that this action is not right. Or it's not just not right, he's saying that these people are social activists or Dalit activists. In fact, interesting case is, probably next time I'll get that video, Sudhir Dhawale, who was arrested on 6th of June 2018. This Sudhir Dhawale made a statement in December 2017, and that statement was live on different Marathi channels. In that statement, Sudhir Dhawale accused Congress and NCP. He kind of blamed, not accused, he blamed them that those people called Sudhir Dhawale and a rest of the people as Nakshalites. And he was like, we were just fighting for Dalit cause and we were labeled as Nakshalites. And interestingly, Sharad Pawar made a statement that Sudhir Dhawale and whatever action is taken against those people, they are just Dalit activists. So when you are in power, they are Maoist. Sudhir Dhawale was arrested in 2011. In 2014, he was acquitted. In fact, he was arrested in Congress NCP rule. He was acquitted in BJP rule 2014. I think that time BJP was there. Yes, it was there in Maharashtra. So uh, this is something like that means it is basically for just political agenda, and that unknowingly helps the Maoist propaganda. And is it something which is happening recently? No. This Such things have happened earlier also, wherein different parties kind of showed support to the Maoist for their electoral gains, and once they came to power, they took action against them. So these kind of things keep on happening. So that is as I said in the beginning, we talked about this fourth generation warfare, wherein it is the line is very blurred between politics and war. So it is really difficult to separate these things. So this is a very complex problem wherein there is national security is also involved, there is politics also linked, and apart from that, certain identity politics is also being linked with it. So it becomes more complex day by day. So that is the fact. I mean, we have to deal with it. It's that kind of situation.